Hello, friends. Today we are diving into one of the most haunting mysteries of the modern world. The story of the RMS Titanic, the largest and most luxurious ship of its time, and how it vanished into the icy depths of the Atlantic Ocean. The date is April 10, 1912. The Titanic leaves the port of Southampton, England, bound for New York City. On board are hundreds of people from every walk of life, from wealthy industrialists and famous actors to immigrants hoping for a better life in America. The air is filled with excitement, hope, and anticipation. This majestic ship is commanded by 62-year-old senior captain Edward John Smith, a man who had spent decades at sea and was known for his calm demeanor and experience. Among the passengers, the public, and the press, there is an air of awe. The Titanic is not just the biggest ship ever built, stretching 269 meters in length and rising over 50 meters high, but it is also a marvel of engineering and luxury. The amount of wealth poured into its construction is staggering. The cost of building the Titanic was $7.5 million at the time, which would translate to roughly $400 million today. Every corner of the ship reflects opulence, from stained glass windows to ornate wood paneling. There are two grand staircases that sweep majestically across the decks, a heated swimming pool, Turkish baths, electric baths, a fully equipped gym, a squash court, 4 lavish restaurants, 2 barber shops, and even a library. The ship was considered unsinkable, equipped with the most advanced safety features of its time. The company behind this marvel, White Star Line, boasted openly that the Titanic could never sink. Their vice president even went as far as to publicly assure people that it was impervious to disaster. Yet, just 2 days after leaving port, on April 12, 1912, the Titanic begins receiving ice warnings. Massive icebergs float in the Atlantic, a hidden threat lurking silently beneath the waves. Ships often communicate with each other about ice fields, but for some reason these warnings were not enough to slow down the Titanic. The ship changes its course twice to avoid danger, but it does not reduce its speed. At 21.5 knots, nearly 40 kilometers per hour, the Titanic presses on toward its destination, confident in its invincibility. 2 days later, on the night of April 14, 1912, 7 more ice warnings are received, but Captain Smith and his crew ignore them. The Titanic continues at full speed as darkness falls. The temperature drops sharply, and this night there is no moon to light the way. Visibility is almost zero. High above the decks, in the crow's nest, a lookout is stationed. This small platform is the only vantage point to spot danger ahead, but the conditions are brutal. The wind cuts through the night, cold and relentless, and the eyes of the lookout water from the chill, making it even harder to see. At 11:39 p.m., Frederick Fleet, stationed in the crow's nest, spots a massive iceberg looming in the distance. Heart pounding, he rings the bell 3 times to alert the crew below, and immediately calls the bridge. Shouting over the line, he warns, "Iceberg ahead! Turn the ship!" First Officer William on the bridge hears the urgent instructions and relays the message to the engine room, "Turn the ship to the left!" But fate has already sealed its course. 1 minute later, at 11:40 p.m., the Titanic collides with the iceberg. This iceberg is no ordinary chunk of ice. It stretches 200 to 400 feet in length, comparable to a football field, and rises to the height of the crow's nest. Scientists estimate its weight at 1.5 million tons. The impact tears along the starboard side of the ship, specifically near the bow. For about 10 seconds, the Titanic scrapes along the jagged ice, a sound like metal grinding against a mountain. The collision leaves a massive dent, puncturing the hull in several places. It is hard to imagine how a block of ice could pierce steel, yet the sheer size and weight of this iceberg make it possible. Within moments, water begins flooding the compartments. Captain Smith and the ship's architect, Thomas Andrews, rush to assess the damage. What they see leaves them stunned. The ship they believed to be unsinkable is doomed. Shock spreads through them like wildfire. The reality is inescapable. This ship, so confident in its invincibility, is about to meet its tragic fate. The Titanic's safety features were revolutionary. It had a double-bottom hull and 16 watertight compartments. Theoretically, even if 4 compartments flooded, the ship would remain afloat. But the iceberg strikes the side, bypassing the double-bottom hull entirely. 6 compartments begin filling with water, far exceeding the limit. The unsinkable Titanic is now sinking. About 20 minutes after the collision, at midnight, Captain Smith orders the crew to send a distress call via radio. Senior radio operator Jack Phillips sends signal after signal, hoping that nearby ships will hear and come to assist. For 20 minutes, there is no response. Then, at 12:20 a.m., the RMS Carpathia, over 100 kilometers away, receives the distress call. Even at full speed, it will take more than 3 hours to reach the Titanic. 3 hours in the freezing North Atlantic is far too long.
Meanwhile, chaos spreads among the passengers. Lifeboats are lowered according to protocol, with women and children given priority. Most passengers, however, are not initially panicked. They believe in the Titanic's invincibility. When the first lifeboat is lowered, it has a capacity of 65 people, yet only 28 board. Confidence lingers, a dangerous illusion. But as water continues to fill the compartments, the ship begins to tilt. Slowly, panic overtakes reason. Passengers scramble, some fighting to secure a spot in the lifeboats, others accepting their fate. By 2:05 a.m., the last lifeboat leaves the ship. More than 1,500 people remain on board. Around 2:20 a.m., the Titanic breaks into 2 pieces and sinks entirely into the icy depths. Those who survive the initial plunge into the freezing waters soon succumb to hypothermia. The temperature of the North Atlantic is -2 degrees Celsius, and at that temperature, survival beyond minutes is impossible without rescue. Captain Smith reportedly remains at the wheel until the very end, going down with the ship, a final act of duty. The Carpathia arrives between 3:30 and 4 a.m., rescuing 705 survivors. The rest perish. Questions arise, controversies emerge, and investigations are launched. One shocking revelation is the role of the SS Californian, only 37 kilometers away. The Californian had received iceberg warnings and could have reached the Titanic in time to rescue many more passengers. Yet, due to miscommunication and an inattentive captain, the Californian remains stationary. Rockets and flares from the Titanic are spotted by the crew of the Californian, but they dismiss them as celebratory signals, assuming the passengers on board are wealthy and partying. One man's mistake, combined with multiple systemic failures, contributes to the scale of this disaster. There were not enough lifeboats on the Titanic, a direct consequence of overconfidence in the ship's unsinkability. Safety drills were skipped. The day the Titanic collided with the iceberg was supposed to have a full safety drill, but Captain Smith canceled it. Crew members were unprepared for the chaos that followed. On the night of the disaster, a critical miscommunication occurs on the bridge. Instructions to turn the ship left are misinterpreted, and instead, the ship veers to the right, closer to the iceberg. By the time the mistake is realized, it is too late to correct. Investigations later reveal that Captain Smith had been pressured by the White Star Line to maintain maximum speed, to complete the maiden voyage in record time. The Titanic was not just to be the largest and most luxurious ship, it was to be the fastest. Even when multiple ice warnings came in, speed was prioritized over caution. The disaster of the Titanic changed the world forever. Regulations were introduced to prevent such a catastrophe from happening again. In 1914, the International Ice Patrol was established to monitor icebergs in the North Atlantic. The International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea set new standards, requiring sufficient lifeboats for every passenger and enforcing strict safety protocols. The wreck of the Titanic remained hidden for over 70 years. In September 1985, American ocean explorer Robert Ballard and a French oceanographer discovered the ship 3,800 meters below the surface. The wreck lies in two separate pieces, about 600 meters apart. The harsh environment has slowly eroded the metal, and experts predict that by 2030, the Titanic may be completely gone. Yet fascination with the Titanic persists. In 2012, Australian billionaire Clive Palmer planned a full-size replica, Titanic II, to sail the same route with exact features of the original ship. As of 2022, delays and lack of interest have stalled the project. Many question the appeal of a replica with no modern amenities, no Wi-Fi, no television, no conveniences, something that would not attract today's travelers. Perhaps this Titanic II will never sail, lost even before it begins. The mystery of the Titanic is not just about a ship sinking, it is about human ambition, hubris, and the fragility of life. It is a story of courage and tragedy, of errors and misfortune, of lessons learned too late. Over a century later, it continues to fascinate, to haunt, and to teach us that even the mightiest can fall when nature, circumstance, and human error collide. Even today, when we think of the Titanic, we are reminded of the people, the stories, and the lives lost in those cold waters. The icebergs, the miscommunications, the overconfidence, and the relentless pressure of progress created a perfect storm. And yet, in its sinking, the Titanic left an indelible mark on history, one that will never be forgotten. It reminds us of the limits of human ingenuity, the unpredictability of nature, and the enduring power of a story that continues to captivate generations.